forecasters say today could finally be the day when temperatures do not climb past 110 degrees in parts of Arizona for the first time in a month. However, heat advisories are still up for tens of millions of Americans across 9 different states. This weekend saw a string of serious and some deadly plane crashes involving small aircraft. 7 people were killed and 3 wounded across 4 separate incidents in California, Wisconsin, and New Hampshire. The causes of the crashes are still under investigation, but they all happened at a time of extreme heat. One of the more dramatic incidents was caught on camera, as you can see there. A small plane crashed less than 100 feet from the shore at a Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. Lifeguards jumped into the water to rescue the pilot, who fortunately was not seriously hurt. Then they dragged the plane out of the water. For more on this, we're going to bring in CBS News transportation safety analyst Robert Sumwalt. He's also the executive director at the Boeing Center for Aviation and Aerospace Safety at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Robert, always good to see you. Can you help us understand what is the impact of extreme heat on aircraft?
Well, hello, Lilia. Yes, it certainly has been a scorching summer. Really, as the temperature increases, the air, of course, gets thinner, and that can affect aircraft performance. The takeoff roll will be longer. The climb performance will not be as great as it would be when it is cooler. So it does decrease performance. Now, in the airline's case, they understand that very well. And so they will reduce the weight of the airplane by offloading passengers or offloading cargo or freight to make sure that there's plenty of safety margin.
So is there a number when it comes to degrees Fahrenheit where you got to say it's too hot to fly, stay on the ground?
You know, it would really all depend on that particular airplane. The pilots or the operations control center would get into the performance charts and make that determination, generally speaking. And so it's going to depend on the altitude of the airport that you're taking off from or landing. But generally, 120 degrees is generally thought of as being pretty much the max for airliners.
Now, you mentioned that commercial planes airlines have some measures in place. Talk to us about cargo planes. Could this also impact the supply chain?
Well, potentially it could, but usually the airport, I'll say that it could. The same effect would occur with what would happen with cargo airplanes as well. They may have to potentially offload some freight. Generally, it's not too much of a problem that they work around those issues.
Now, you were talking about the cargo planes, and I just can't imagine what it's like to be offloaded, basically, from a commercial flight and made to wait on the tarmac when it's too hot to fly. I mean, what is that like, and at what point is it too hot to just fly at all for those commercial flights?
Well, certainly it's incumbent on the airline to keep the passenger cabin cool. And we did see an event in the last 10 days or so where supposedly passengers were on board an airplane at Las Vegas for an exorbitant amount of time. It can, as we all know, it can be awfully uncomfortable sitting in the back of an airplane when it's hot. There's another effect that the heat can have as well, and that is, of course, when it's hotter this time of year, we get thunderstorms, and we know that can wreak havoc on the air traffic control center. So there will be more delays, more cancellations, and that in itself is very frustrating for passengers also. And the crew. I was an airline pilot for 24 years, and I understand it can be frustrating for the pilots and the flight crews as well.
Yeah, I mean, what about the runways themselves? I'm thinking the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me while landing in Puerto Rico was we can't land because there's too many iguanas on the tarmac, which tells me that it's warm enough for the iguanas to be there, you know, getting that heat. Is there a risk of buckling? I mean, how does it impact flying if it's too hot on the literal runway?
You know, I've never heard of runways for an air carrier in the United States buckling due to heat, but I suspect in some parts of the world where the runways are not maintained as well as they are here in the United States, I imagine that it could be a factor.
I see. Well, Robert Sumwalt, always appreciate the expert guidance on how planes fly, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got to watch out for those iguanas on the runway. That's a real problem.